There is one objective truth of existence, yet countless subjective falsehoods are accepted as true by the vast majority of humanity. That's why humanity is so alienated from reality, and so prone to destructive fantasies. If you want a false theory of everything as opposed to the real theory of everything, your first port of call might be New Age guru Ken Wilber's supremely fallacious system, known as integral theory, where he attempts to place a wide diversity of mystical theories, and the teachings of various gurus going back thousands of years, into a single framework that supposedly explains everything. In effect, Wilber seeks to show how ancient wisdom, especially of the East, is the wisdom the modern world needs, when in fact all such ancient wisdom has been exhaustively refuted by science, mathematics and philosophy, and it's a wonder that anyone still refers to ancient wisdom at all rather than ancient primitivism, superstition, and ignorance. The only wise people of the ancient world were the Greek philosophers, and they remain of a far higher intellectual standing than the average people of today. Their ideas continue to shape science, mathematics and philosophy. Wilber's central trick is to present pre-rational human thinking, i.e. irrational, illogical nonsense driven by faith, feelings, mysticism, superstition, and so on, as trans-rational, implying that it somehow wonderfully transcends reason and logic. To any rational and logical person, everything Wilber labels trans-rational is in fact just pre-rational, but given a makeover in modern jargon stolen from philosophy, science and mathematics. Most of humanity has never escaped from primitivism, from irrational fantasy. Only a tiny fraction of humans have any degree of mathematical, scientific and philosophical literacy. The majority of people are eager to have old primitivism repackaged as cutting-edge enlightenment. Their ability to comprehend reality is stuck at the same level as the knowledge provided by Abraham, Moses, Zoroaster, the Buddha, Jesus Christ, St. Paul, Muhammad, and so on. The average person can't comment on Plato, Aristotle, Descartes, Leibniz, Kant, Hegel, Einstein, Heisenberg, Gödel, Feynman, and so on. They don't know anything about them. Nietzsche said, "Ultimately no one can hear in things, books included, more than he already knows." If you have no access to something from experience, you will have no ear for it. If people have no experience with advanced science, mathematics and philosophy, then these cannot inform their thinking in any way. Average people simply have no ear for advanced reason and logic. Rather than accept this as a catastrophic defect, they simply appeal to the trans-rational order instead, which says that personal, subjective experience and feeling are right and it is in fact reason and logic that are limited and defective. Anyone who attacks reason and logic is preaching to the choir as far as most of humanity is concerned. The average person is 100% certain that reason and logic are not the answer to existence because, if they were, the average person would be totally screwed. Given that the average person is hardwired to deny that he is screwed, he will always accept a bad, irrational answer he subjectively likes over a good, rational answer he objectively doesn't understand. Of course, he wouldn't know the rational answer was good. This is the core of the Dunning-Kruger effect. People are unable to identify the worth of things they don't understand. They have to bring everything down to the level they do understand, and humanity understands mythos much better than it understands logos. Humanity is always drawn to pre-rational thinking rather than rational thinking. Rather than accept rational thinking as higher than irrational thinking, the irrationalists simply reinvent pre-rational thinking as trans-rational thinking. They emphatically deny that they are engaged in primitive, pre-rational thinking and proclaim instead that they are engaged in the most advanced thinking, so enlightened and progressive that it takes them beyond reason and logic. As if, rather than study mathematics, science and philosophy, all the hard stuff that they don't like and don't understand, these people engage in contemplation, meditation and mindfulness. Absolutely anyone can claim that he has meditated and made some great breakthrough to a higher level of awareness. No subjective claim can be objectively contradicted, which is exactly how irrationalists like it. Your truth is your truth, right? These people don't ever want to be put down by mathematicians, scientists, and philosophers. Ken Wilber's entire shtick is about contriving to present pre-rational in a new guise as trans-rational. He actually talks about the pre/trans fallacy, which states that people often mistake what is pre-rational for being post-rational, trans-rational, and vice versa. Wikipedia says, Wilber claims that Freud and Jung commit this fallacy. Freud considered mystical realization to be a regression to infantile oceanic states. Wilber alleges that Freud thus commits a fallacy of reduction. Wilber thinks that Jung commits the converse form of the same mistake by considering pre-rational myths to reflect divine realizations. Likewise, pre-rational states may be misidentified as post-rational states. Wilber characterizes himself as having fallen victim to the pre/trans fallacy in his early work. The true reason why it is so easy to mix up the pre-rational and the trans-rational is the simple one that they are exactly the same thing. They are irrationalism, pure and simple. Things are either rational and logical or irrational and illogical. There is no irrational level below reason and logic and another irrational level above reason and logic. This is manifestly absurd. It is itself a spectacular fallacy, based on a supposed distinction between different levels of irrationalism. What criteria would you use to distinguish between two irrational statements, one deemed pre-rational and the other post-rational, aka trans-rational? You certainly wouldn't be appealing to any rational criteria. To any rationalist, there is no difference between allegedly different strains of irrationalism. Labeling something trans-rational makes no difference to the irrational content. The label exists simply to make irrationalists feel better about their ineradicable irrationalism and to allow them to wallow in the delusion that they have miraculously transcended reason and logic. It is essential for Wilber, a religious mystic and true believer, to posit the existence of an irrational layer of reality that, so he claims, accesses higher truths than reason and logic. No such layer exists, and it's totally irrational and illogical to believe otherwise. But that's the whole point. Wilber's system is not for the rational and logical. It's for the simpleton multitudes that hate reason and logic and prefer anything else. It's the sweetest music to their ears to be told that their irrational gibberish is the highest truth and will bring them to nirvana. God forbid that they should have to study an advanced mathematics book rather than meditate if they wish to reach enlightenment. What's the difference between the adjectives affective and cognitive? Affective relates to the emotions while cognitive relates to reason and logic. The game of Wilber and all such gurus is to privilege the affective over the cognitive, because the vast bulk of the human race is affective and not cognitive. No affective person seeks a cognitive answer to existence, and vice versa. The question is, who is right? Is reality to be understood emotionally or intellectually? Although it ought to be self-evident that understanding is an intellectual, cognitive undertaking, the vast majority of people believe they can successfully understand reality in an effective way via emotional stories, mythos, and effective practices such as prayer, meditation, mindfulness, and drugs. Wilber's game is to tell all such people that they are right, and that their subjective experiences, feelings, perceptions, beliefs, instincts and mystical intuitions are correct, and always trump reason and logic. If you hate math, science, philosophy, reason and logic, this is exactly what you want to hear. Wilber wrote, the Greeks had a beautiful word, cosmos, which means the patterned whole of all existence, including the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual realms. Ultimate reality was not merely the cosmos, or the physical dimension, but the cosmos, or the physical and emotional and mental and spiritual dimensions altogether. Not just matter, lifeless and insentient, but the living totality of matter, body, mind, soul, and spirit. The cosmos. Now there is a real theory of everything. But us poor moderns have reduced the cosmos to the cosmos. We have reduced matter and body and mind and soul and spirit to nothing but matter alone, and in this drab and dreary world of scientific materialism, we are lulled into the notion that a theory uniting the physical dimension is actually a theory of everything. Sounds pretty good, right? What could possibly go wrong with Wilber's plan to have a cosmos theory of everything rather than a cosmos theory of everything? Well, more or less everything, as it turns out. Wilber is intent on lumping together all the worst ideas humanity has ever had, all the most false, mystical, superstitious speculations and beliefs, while rejecting as far as possible all the rigor and progress of advanced mathematics, science and philosophy, which all gets dismissed as reductionist and stuck at a particular level. Is it? Well, that's obviously what needs to be established. Wilber wrote, "The word integral means comprehensive, inclusive, non-marginalizing, embracing. Integral approaches to any field attempt to be exactly that, to include as many perspectives, styles, and methodologies as possible within a coherent view of the topic. In a certain sense, integral approaches are meta-paradigms, or ways to draw together an already existing number of separate paradigms into an interrelated network of approaches that are mutually enriching. The very act of including as many perspectives, styles, and methodologies as possible within a coherent view of the topic is actually what produces total incoherence. How could you do science if alongside the scientific method you deployed a multitude of non-scientific methods to provide different perspectives? You have rejected the scientific method as soon as you rely on anything incompatible with the scientific method. The whole of mysticism is incompatible with the scientific method. This book is about cutting through the nonsense to get to the truth. The truth, just to give you a preview, is the simplest and most rational possible, that which reflects Occam's razor and the principle of sufficient reason, PSR. As a quick heads up, if you oppose the PSR, you are irrational, and if you deny Occam's razor, you are claiming that reality follows a redundantly and mysteriously complex path rather than the simplest path possible. What is ultimate reductionism? It is simply the means of establishing the absolute truth of existence, the PSR and Occam's razor solution, the solution that could not be any simpler or more rational. The PSR and Occam's razor solution is based on pure logic and reason and is the opposite of Wilber's theory of everything, which has nothing to do with reason, logic, the PSR and Occam's razor, and indeed rejects all of these, ultimately in favor of Wilber's chosen belief system, non-dualism, especially of the Buddhist flavor. Wikipedia says, in agreement with Mahayana Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta, Wilber believes that reality is ultimately a non-dual union of emptiness and form, with form being innately subject to development over time. Buddhist mysticism is almost wholly lacking a conceptual framework. It must be understood experientially. Buddhist non-dualism is, it is claimed, experienced as the nature of mind in which thought and the absence of thought are no longer mutually exclusive. Meditation is believed to lead to flashes of emptiness and then non-dualism, which grow deeper as the meditation becomes more profound. Form is characterized as the quality of solidity, permanence, separateness, continuity, and definition, while emptiness is the quality of insubstantiality, impermanence, indistinctness, discontinuity, and ambiguity. Form is associated with security while emptiness is associated with excitement. Non-dualism is the supposed recognition that existence and experience are permeated by the qualities of form and emptiness, qualities which are in a constant, erratic flux. Humans, it is said, seek to control that flux via either security, form, or excitement, emptiness. A good relationship with form is impossible, it is asserted, unless emptiness is embraced, because form and emptiness are non-dual. They are aspects of each other, constantly reflecting each other, in a limitless dance with each other. This is of course just typical incoherent Eastern mysticism. If you can't define what you are talking about, you are just making it up as you go along. How can you even refer to emptiness and then populate it with all manner of properties, making it very full? Why not refer to form and formlessness? Or order and chaos? But then you are faced with the classic interaction problem of Cartesian substance dualism. How do you get opposite things to coexist, to interact, to have any relationship at all with each other? How do they even have mutual being since each directly contradicts the other, i.e., the very basis of the existence of the one rules out the existence of the other, which has the opposite, totally contradictory basis. The Eastern idea of non-dualism, the supposed combination of emptiness and form, appears suspiciously like dualism. It's dualism subjected to the Orwellian doublethink requirement that you deny that it's dualism and accept it instead as a non-dualism, even though it obviously isn't. In Western philosophy, Plato and Aristotle proposed the duality of form and matter. Aristotle was held to subscribe to a doctrine of prime matter, which concerned pure potentiality. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says, what it means to call prime matter pure potentiality is that it is capable of taking on any form whatsoever, and thus is completely without any essential properties of its own. It exists eternally, since, if it were capable of being created or destroyed, there would have to be some even lower matter to underlie those changes. Because it is the matter of the elements, which are themselves present in all more complex bodies, it is omnipresent, and underlies not only elemental generation and destruction, but all physical changes. As a completely indeterminate substratum, prime matter bears some similarities to what modern philosophy has called a bare particular. Commentators debate whether Aristotle's prime matter is to be regarded as actual non-being or being entirely in potentiality. In the first case, prime matter is totally different from form, actuality, it's non-being versus being, while in the second case, it's the lowest mode of form, form without any actuality. In the first case, we are dealing with a dualism, in the second case, with a monism. Now, you might think that non-dualism must mean monism since it is opposed to dualism, but you would be wrong. The Psychological Wiki says, the Western philosophical concept monism is similar to non-dualism. But monism holds that all phenomena are actually of the same substance. Non-dualism proper, on the other hand, holds rather that different phenomena are inseparable or that there is no hard line between them, but that they are not the same. In other words, so-called non-dualism is actually just Cartesian substance dualism, where you pretend that the fatal differences between the two contradictory substances just miraculously fade away at some deep level. They don't. Your logical problems with Cartesian substance dualism do not conveniently vanish at some mystical scale approved by Wilber and his kind. Note how close Aristotelian prime matter is conceptually to Buddhist emptiness. But the Buddhists certainly don't want matter stinking up their joint. So, here's your choice. You have emptiness and form, non-dualism, which appears remarkably like Aristotelian matter/form dualism, versus the PSR and Occam's razor, absolute reductionist monism. Which shall you choose? Your choice says everything about you, about how rational and logical, or otherwise, you are. Do you feel yourself compelled to defend Buddhist non-dualism, or do you immediately side with reason and logic? Your instinctive reaction is totally revealing about what kind of person you are, and what kind of solution you are prepared to accept regarding the ultimate nature of reality. Remember, there are only two choices, a rational one and an irrational one. The rational one is that decreed by the PSR and Occam's razor. The irrational one is anything else. Never forget, one right answer, infinite wrong answers. Wilber is profoundly attracted to every wrong answer, and just as profoundly repulsed by the actual answer.